Long Take Review, where college professors talk film, providing insight, not assigning homework. I'm your host, Jen Subchakshay-Bankard, and I'm here with 3 of the best New Republic pilots. First, he's our missing ace of staves. No one knows what he looks like, and most believe him to be dead. It's PT McNiff. How's it going, PT?
Big pipe, huh? I'm doing great, Jen. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Best out of context quote. Although I'm a little disappointed you didn't do more of a voice.
I tried it. I practiced, and I don't think I could pull it off.
It didn't work.
So I let it go.
That's fair. And he doesn't speak, but sure, you can feed him. It's Greg Cass. How's it going, Greg?
And after tomorrow night, I'll be my own man. Hi, Jen. I'm good. I tried the voice and I regret trying. So
that's right. We appreciate the swing nonetheless. And we've hired an independent contractor to join us on this mission. He'll take out every bad guy in your deck of cards. It's Dan Zare from Coffee with Kenobi. First appearance on the show. Dan, welcome. How are you?
I am great. I have a quote. It's not from this movie. It's a quote from Seinfeld. It's a show about nothing.
Okay. We'll get into it. Dear listeners, if Dan didn't give it away, those were all references to the film we are here to review today, The Mandalorian and Grogu, the first Star Wars film to hit theaters in 7 years. The story finds Din Djarin and his adopted son Grogu hunting down Imperial remnants in the lawless Outer Rim and cashing checks from the New Republic for doing so. They report to Colonel Ward, played by action blockbuster icon Sigourney Weaver, though we can debate the extent to which she's in this movie, for their next assignment. We, of course, had to bring in the big guns to help us review this film. Dan, do you want to take a minute or two to tell our listeners about your show, Coffee with Kenobi, a little bit about the extra special experience you had seeing this film for the first time? I can guarantee it's different than the 3 of us.
Well, by the way, Grogu, that's pretty awesome. When you record this lovely trio, you get to see. And mine is cut up. Yours says Gara. What does yours say?
Oh, it's Garazem Petelius.
Oh, perfect.
I make it more and more complicated every time.
I love it. Mine that must be my size. But anyway, so Coffee with Kenobi is a podcast. We just celebrated our 13-year anniversary, and we try to make Star Wars intellectual but fun. We take the topic seriously, but not ourselves too seriously. And when I say we, it's mostly me and whoever I'm lucky enough to co-host with each and every week. The show has been a lot of fun. It's taken me a lot of places around the world. And one of the fun places it's taken me is to Hollywood red carpet events. So I just got back, the week before I came out with my son, Mason. We went to the red carpet premiere, and got to go to Jon Favreau's personal warehouse and got to tour a lot of the props and sets from the films and the TV series. And Mason and I also got to sit in the cockpit of the actual Razor Crest and fly it. We got to walk around the New Republic set for where the pilots hang out. Mason sat where Grogu sat, and I sat where Sigourney Weaver sat for the 5 minutes she was on set for this entire thing. And it was pretty remarkable. It was a really, really awesome experience.
That's amazing. Nice. Did you prevent Mason from snacking? Right, that's the key part of that scene.
You know what? There was he maintained some self-discipline. Many years in the making.
My kids have no such discipline. They have snacks freely, and then I suffer the consequences later. All right, amazing. That's so great. And Dan, feel free to reference things from your experience if they come up naturally in our conversation throughout.
Absolutely.
We want to obviously take advantage of your experience, and you did a great job covering it on social media and on your show. I really felt like I was living vicariously through you.
The experience was really fun. I'm glad because I truly want people, because I don't take for granted how fortunate I am. I really want people to feel like they get to be part of the experience, because I just think it's awesome. I wish everybody could come along.
Amazing. So if you are listening to us for the first time, we will have a spoiler-free section for those who have not seen the film, though, like, why are you here, I guess, is my question. If you haven't seen it yet, this is a Star Wars movie in theaters. Did we mention that already? But with a clear alert, we will shift into spoiler mode for the rest of the show. So you usually are good for about the first 20 minutes or so. And then after that, listen for the spoiler warning. PT, if listeners think we're one of the good ones after listening to this episode, what can they do?
If listeners want to bring us in warm or want to bring us in cold, they should follow the Long Take Review wherever they get their podcasts. We host the feed on Jen's Substack at thelongtake.substack.com, but you can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Overcast, YouTube, and many more. Wherever you're listening right now, you can find us there. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at The Long Take Review. We're also on Letterboxd. You can follow us at the account at LTRpod, or you can search for the hashtag LTRpod to see what each of us individually has been watching. Jen?
Thanks, PT. As always, let's just get into it with the short take. So what was everyone's general reaction, so your soundbite reaction to The Mandalorian Grogu? Dan, do you want first crack since you're a guest?
Actually, I'd love to go last.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm more interested in what you all have to think. I know what I think. It's not that interesting.
I can empathize because I'm usually the one who goes last, and Greg and PT often are so like, no, you go first. I'm like, no, don't you understand? Like, I like going last, so I get it. Greg, then you've seen it the most times out of us all. I think you're at number 4 in terms of your viewing.
I am. Yes. Sorry. Yes.
So you should go
but
first.
You want me to talk more than that? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So I have a personal philosophy just to put the number 4 in context, where when Star Wars is in theaters, I see Star Wars instead of going to other movies. So for listeners that have forgotten this, I have an AMC Stubs Pass, which means I get 4 free movies a week, and I am there many nights after bedtime. So that's why I've racked up the 4 viewings so quickly, and I sound like a crazy person, and I'm only slightly a crazy person because I'm not paying for it, at least, but we'll see. Okay. It's so hard to talk about this movie, but I'm going to go with what is my true instinct for my short take, which is, when you are at like an amusement park and you smell the cotton candy and you go and you grab a big giant cotton candy, you give in to the temptation and you are like, this is gonna be awesome. And you take a big wad, you pull it out and you put it in your mouth. And it's that feeling of like, there's nothing in my mouth. Where'd it go? What happened? I honestly feel like this movie is, for better and worse, it's that feeling. It's like, I just had a big load of sweet in my mouth. Wait, where'd it go? What just happened? Like, how did we get through this? So that is to say, I will say I remain on the positive side, but in the grand Star Wars buffet, as our ranking episode that recently dropped demonstrated, I am much more on The Last Jedi and the Andor side of Star Wars. And I think this is in a completely different part of Star Wars. And so this may not be my favorite kind of Star Wars, but I have gone back and gotten more cotton candy 4 times. Still not full, but maybe we'll never get full, but it's also not sustained. PT, what did you think? And please don't use junk food because I already trod that territory.
By the way, Grogu, what a fabulous metaphor. Well done.
All right, wait, let me cross off all my Burger King references. I was about to make.
Not a paid sponsorship.
Nope. I had a great time with this movie. I have only seen it twice, like a normal person, ? But I have a great time with this movie. I am enjoying it. I will gladly see it again. I feel like I will not regret that I will be returning to watch it over and over in the theaters when I have it at home. That's I think it is a fun addition to the Star Wars franchise. And I think fun is this word that's being thrown around a lot with this. And to the point that some people are like, it's almost an insult that it's so minimal. It's not, it is that sort of gossamer thin experience of there's not a lot of there. And I think that's a fair critique. I think there's lots of things we're going to critique this movie about. There's lots of nitpicks. There's lots of what's the opposite of a nitpick? Like what a big pick, boulder pick that we can do with this. But in the end, I feel like when it became this new era, this new reality of where there's going to be many Star Wars. There's not going to be just, every couple of decades, there's a few Star Wars that come out and then hold those, cherish those. But instead it was going to be movies and TV shows, live action entertainment at the level with which we had been getting books and comics and animated shows. With that, there was a part of me that was like, I hope they don't feel like every one of these has to be like huge and important and epic in the way that the Lucas era episodes were. The 6 original Skywalker saga movies all had to feel like this big statement. So I'm not mad that this is a minor appearance of Star Wars. I'm not upset about that. I actually kind of appreciate this because it's sort of just like, I don't know if this matters. Like in the end, I don't know if we need to have had it, but I had a great time and I'm excited to talk about it more. So Jen, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah. So I think I'm probably going to be the highest out of the long take regulars, purely based on our Letterboxd reviews. But I would say like there's kind of no denying what both of you had said. This is a very light on story movie, high on adventure and action. But I was largely okay with that. I hopefully through our conversation, I'm going to try to dig deep for what is there. I think that the critics that are like, this isn't even a movie, we can't even call this a movie, are wrong, and that there is a little bit to scrape off the the bowl that is of substance. There's a little bit of protein and mostly sugar, to continue Greg's weird metaphor. but
weirder, I think, but that's okay.
Sorry, I brought it to the molecular level and made it nutritional. But I would say that like a lot of what I love about Star Wars is in this movie, and all of the creature effects look great. The ratio of like aliens and creatures to humanoids in this movie just made me really happy, because that is an aspect of Star Wars that I really love. And I would say that the response that people are having that may be negative does have to do with kind of a lack of conflict, and I want to get into that in spoiler mode, but a very specific type of conflict that is making the relationships between these characters feel a little frictionless. And I know frictionless is kind of a loaded word these days because of AI and stuff like that. And but that's I think I can diagnose sort of what's missing from this movie. I do think there's an explanation for why it is the way it is. And hopefully we can get into it. But overall, I Rod of the Hutt, I'm sort of like Maz Kanata, where I'm like, where's that hut? Where's my boyfriend? I really liked him. He was a great character. I thought the movie was at its best when he was in it. And I know that's not a take that a lot of people share necessarily, at least on the internet. But I'm excited to get into it. Dan, now that we've sort of opened our hand in terms of how we feel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, okay, so I won't spoil anything just yet. I will say the general consensus after we saw this movie at the IMAX, all of us, like my colleagues in this thing, like we all kind of huddled together, and we all pretty much had the same opinion, which was this is a safe movie, and a bit unsatisfying, but also in that same breath, fun. Mason had so much fun. I spent a lot of the movie watching his reactions whenever Grogu was on screen. Probably what I would do if I was watching it with Tom Gross, because I'm sure he'd have similar reactions because he just loves himself some Grogu. But I smiled a lot. I oohed and ahed a lot. And then in the second half of the film, I thought, okay, this is violating the major thing I want from a story, which is this a story that must be told, that demands to be told, that the creators of the story feel so compelled they must get this off of their collective chest and put this onto paper so that it can be filmed? And what do we learn about the characters as a result? Do they change? Do they grow? And So there's where I have my sort of my Janice interpretation of this, because on the one hand, I had so much fun, and it was just fun to see something fun, because fun is missing from Star Wars. I love Andor. I think it's brilliant, Emmy worthy, captivating. Maul was fascinating, but those aren't fun projects. The original Star Wars had cost, but it was pretty superficial cost. It was really just a heck of a lot of fun. This is a heck of a lot of fun. But, and I talked about this a lot with some other folks, sort of in the world of Lucasfilm too, and the general consensus is cool. This is fun, but
right, but could have been more, right?
Yeah.
Should have. I would argue should have been more.
Should have. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect segue into the recommendation algorithm, in which we establish the audience of a film. So, because I think what you're talking about definitely plays into this concept of like who this movie is for. Like the core audience that the creators of this movie were trying to include. So in an interview, and I want to say that I think he said it in a couple places, but the main interview that I'm thinking of is when he appeared at CinemaCon. Jon Favreau was interviewed by Matt Bellamy from The Town for the Town podcast, and it's a really great interview. And he said that he really had to treat this movie like episode 1, season 1 of The Mandalorian, because they wanted to make sure they could reach as broad and as big an audience as possible. I guess I have two kind of connected questions. One is, do we think that the film succeeds at that? And two, do we feel like that might partially explain sort of our criticisms of the film in some ways?
Actually, do you mind if I jump in on this one?
Yeah, go for it.
So I can echo that. John and Dave actually said this to my face, to my actual face. Look, we made season 4. We wrote season 4. But they were experiencing something else on the big screen, and I don't remember what it was. And they kind of looked at each other and said, wouldn't it be cool if we could put our characters on the big screen? And the writer's strike happened. Things got reshuffled and rejuggled. And they thought, if we put Mandalorian and Grogu on the big screen, there's a lot of baggage. You have to watch 3 seasons of something. That is intimidating. So let's create something that is for the masses, that can bring people into the fun and wonder of Star Wars, where it doesn't require any sort of prior knowledge of something. And so then they did this. And did it succeed in that regard? I think so. I think the big question for me is, if I watch this, would I want to watch all of the backstory stuff? And I think if I just wanted to have fun and these characters are exciting and this is a laugh, yes. And wouldn't it be interesting to talk to someone who has never seen those 3 seasons or the Book of Boba Fett, and their reaction to the difference in tone, the tonal shift from those compared to this movie?
I most want to talk to someone who's only seen the Book of Boba Fett and not the Mandalorian, and then this movie. Well, I mean,
the mods. Where are the mods?
Yeah, there's a distinct lack of the water merchant. I thought he was going to come back.
Well, he was in the cutscene. He was in the post-credits scene.
Yeah, you didn't wait. Someone didn't wait through the credits. I think. Well, I mean, the good news is we do have some insight from our once in future 4th chair, long take reviewer Antonio, who's never seen the TV show but did go see the movie.
Oh, that's right.
Cool. And he had a great time. He thought this was good. He thought, he is generally on board, where I think a lot of us are, where he's just like, there wasn't a lot of pathos, I guess, or that sort of their core narrative movement at the heart of it, that we're especially used to in Star Wars movies, of seeing these characters, for the most part, or at least some of the main characters, change, grow, evolve over the course of a movie and get to a new point. But he was like, there were, all the nice things we were saying. He said he had a great time. His kids had a great time. They've never seen The Mandalorian. I do not know if they plan to go back. I am certain Antonio doesn't, but his sons may want to. I'll have to check in with him on that.
And I have no doubt that if I only saw this, I'd be like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'd be like stoked and be charmed by it. But I certainly wouldn't be putting on my teacher hat.
Yeah, I think it's fair to sort of feel like you would watch this and say, like, okay, that was this story.
That was cool. Yeah.
What else possibly is there? And they wouldn't necessarily know about like leaving and coming back and all the sort of steps along the way. Yeah, so I do think it was successful in terms of connecting with people. I think it was successful in terms of I've always sort of felt since they announced this that it sort of made sense on some level to return to the theaters post pandemic, post Rise of Skywalker, after this, and then post after the strikes, where we sort of had all these stop and start announced projects. They're delayed, they're canceled, whatever. That the return was this, like, we're not trying to hit a home run. We're barely trying to get to second base. We're just trying to make contact. We just want you to remember that Star Wars can be in a movie theater. Would you please come out and watch a Star Wars? And, that seemed to sort of be what it was. And especially once it became clear, and to me, at least, I feel like since the announcement, it's been clear that it's like, this is not Heir to the Empire. This is not the advancement of the larger Mandoverse plots that are happening. This is a standalone side quest sequence of things. And, the idea of, I've heard, it's interesting because I've heard Jon Favreau sort of almost say two different things across the interviews that I've read or listened to. He always says they wrote season 4, then the strikes happened. Then it was, sometimes they had the idea, sometimes it's Disney had the idea of putting it on the big screen. But either way, they're like, yeah, that would be cool. And that sometimes it's that they evolved the scripts into the movie. Some other times it's they wrote something entirely new. But this does feel like, what if you just took the immediate present action scenes and sequences from a Mando season and took out the bigger plot developments that were happening? And that's not going to work for people who I think are really locked in and want some of that advancement. Is that going to be something that people will miss? I mean, we do, again, but we're in it. We're all deep into this. It does seem like there is some appeal of this being relatively light, relatively smooth for everyone. The cotton candy, the fun, but elements seems to be positive, but also feels like, congratulations at succeeding at your low aim, I guess, is a potential way of seeing this whole project.
Attempting a sports metaphor. The guy who always hits doubles doesn't get the Hall of Fame. Maybe?
Yeah. I mean, it depends how many doubles they hit, Greg. But sure.
I really liked Dan's opening comment, the use of the word safe, because I think for better or worse, that does really feel what this movie is. And I think I would use that harshly in general, that to me, Rise of Skywalker was also safe, right? It was like, oh, we took a bunch of risks in Last Jedi. Let's pull back. Let's make sure we don't make people angry. We'll bring Palpatine back. That'll make everybody happy. And then, although it's now the age of the internet, so that makes nobody happy and nothing is safe. But I do feel like the goal here, what shocked me the most is how few callbacks there were to anything related to the show. So the quote Jen read kind of filled me in with that, down to and I did mention this on another podcast appearance, so sorry Greg fans who tracked me down on another show, but I was shocked that like Grogu is sitting there on the control panel and he doesn't grab the little ball. It, like, he's back in the Razor Crest. It seems like, you can kind of see it there. It's still there in this new version of the Razor Crest. And it seemed like the easiest callback in the world, or we get the one kind of pan over Navarro. Like, where's IG-12? Like, he's been a character on that show from the beginning, right? And is supposedly very active in that town still. And even just go by the Grief Karga statue. I mean, obviously we lost Carl Weathers, but you could still do some of those things. And the restraint this movie showed in not drawing that in, I think clearly shows me that they were aiming for the biggest audience possible. The box office suggests they did okay at that, but I also think this falls right in the current Marvel problem, which is people were demanding everything connect, and now they don't want to do the homework. And so the studios are left trying to guess what people want. And this is more like a Fantastic Four, where it's like, you don't have to know everything, and Pedro Pascal's here, and have a good time. But it kind of has that same feeling of like, well, but if this is supposed to be something bigger, or I would be interested in the people who go to the movies like once or twice a year and maybe cashed in their family budget for this one, how they're feeling. That's kind of the audience I'd want to talk to, not weirdos like me who are living at their local AMC. But it is striking to me that I can remember people in my life who kind of got attached to Baby Yoda, having never really watched The Mandalorian. My wife had a former colleague who like had a Baby Yoda, and she created little outfits for it and treated it like an American Girl doll, but it was Baby Yoda. I was like, oh, is she really into Mandalorian? My wife's like, she's never seen it. She just likes Baby Yoda. And like that's like the power of this character, and I think this movie traded on that power. I just don't know if it did enough. Like, are those people happy when he nibbles cookies? And I mean, Jen's reaction suggests yes.
Greg, everyone's happy when those things happen. Come on. Like,
to try to rein us back into the segment we're allegedly in, I will say for the recommendation algorithm that both of you are right. Like, this idea of this is very safe for, especially like within the context of Star Wars and the Star Wars as a franchise, as a media property, as this cultural phenomenon that exists in the world, and the response and the fans and the anti-fans and blah, 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 all that stuff that no one really wants to think about or talk about. As a movie, this is a really weird movie. What percentage of time in this movie, I don't know the answer to this. I'm asking rhetorically. What percentage of time in this movie are we looking at a human face? I'm going to guess it's like under 20, maybe under 15. Exactly. It is a lot of aliens and monsters and creatures and puppets and CGI.
And wearing a helmet.
And helmets, right. and some stop motion and things as well. Like, it's very weird. It is like, I think the thing, on one level, you don't need, who has to recommend everyone knows Star Wars. Everyone gets it. And I think a lot of people understand that this is like, it's like it's like the TV show. Have you seen the TV show? No? Well, maybe, do you want to see action movies? Whatever. This is a really weird, like, fantasy movie too. Like, this is a weird, like, somewhere between high fantasy and a sword and sorcery movie of like the armored warrior going into the world and dealing with all these monsters. And it's happening in space, and it's happening across different planets. But I would say that I don't know who's made it this far into an episode of us talking about it who doesn't already understand where they stand on the Mandalorian and Grogu. But like, I feel like that's a corner of people I would recommend this to, who maybe are like, I don't like space, sci-fi, Star Wars stuff. That doesn't matter to me. And it's like, but do you like giant beasts? And do you like weird little creatures crawling around? Then like this is an extreme version of that flavor of Star Wars that might cross over to appeal to people who like high fantasy again and sword and sorcery kind of movies.
I have so much exposition to dump right now, but Jen, I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, no. So I was just going to say that oftentimes in this section of the show, we manage people's expectations, right? So if you are listening to us and you have not seen this movie, but you're looking forward to seeing it and you're about to shut us off once we go into spoiler mode, then I would say, just keep in mind that this movie has been built for the fans that are familiar with Baby Yoda, but maybe not Grogu. I think that's the easiest or most concise way to think about it, is that it's for them too, right? And my kids are in that category. I think I had tried to rope them into my rewatch of the series before going to see the movie, and it was kind of hit or miss for a while, and then eventually they got kind of locked in, and they were like, "Oh, we really like," but the movie is what actually cinched their interest. And when we got home, they asked, "Can we keep watching the show?" Because I think we had made it to early season 2 by the time we went to go see the movie. And then when we came after seeing the movie, they were the one, instead of me being like, "Hey guys, I'm going to put on the Mando," and then being like, "Oh, okay." But now they're like, they're asking to watch it. So I do think that if, using them as an anecdotal test case, I do think that this movie can be bringing in, especially younger fans. I would say that, like, for me, the biggest recommendation is like, go see it with your family, right? This is like one of the most family friendly Star Wars properties to come out in some time. And so I think that was really special for me to share it with them. We brought the little Nilla wafers to snack on in the movie theater. Apologies to Regal. We also bought popcorn. I give them so much money, so I don't know why I'm apologizing. But and the other thing too is like, I think a lot of what we are about to talk about in spoiler mode can be in some ways accounted for because of this bigger choice. Because I think there are definitely characters that as a hardcore Star Wars fan, I was really excited to see, but I think if you're but there was nothing provided. Like if I were a person who didn't know those characters, I didn't get to know them at all. And I think we overcorrected to try to make it for everyone. We then sucked out all of the kind of backstory type stuff in the screenplay that I think it was PT in our Star Wars ranking episode sort of said that's what's so amazing about A New Hope is that you're being introduced to all the stuff for the first time, but there's little lines everywhere that kind of imply more story, right? And I feel like this didn't have any implied story. It was just the story that we were getting on the screen. So that's to say, if you haven't seen the movie yet, don't keep listening after this. But also just manage your expectations. Yeah,
absolutely. No, I would definitely. People have been asking me this, quite a bit. Like I'm sure, like the three of you, and I've been saying, it's just a lot of fun. Go see it for sure. And then I inevitably get the follow-up question: do you like it better than the TV show? And I always said no. And then they said, "Are you going to go like see it a bunch of times this weekend?" I'm like, no. I'm not. And they said, why? So, well, you can read my review or just wait and see it. So here's the thing. Like if the bar is, let me go back at its very core. And I'm preaching to the choir here. A movie should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It should have characters that change and grow. It should have some sort of a cost, some sort of a substance. In my mind's eye, I want a movie to tell me something about the world, the real world, through allegory, through metaphor. My favorite Twain quote about true, fiction is obliged to tell the truth. Tell me some truths through a beautifully conducted narrative. And because I knew that you were going to, I'll be honest, I did a little research myself. I'm going to cite Garrick, and he says, narratives should be sequentially linked events that portray characters with agency and their actions and interactions in some structured and organized plot. That doesn't exist here. And I'm not trying to be cute. I'm really not. And I take no joy in feeling that way. But not only should stories have that, but this is Star Wars. If you haven't seen a Star Wars movie in a theater in 7 years, it has to have punch. It has to have impact. It has to wow you, because that is what we have been sold for almost 50 years. Like that's what Star Wars does in the movie theater. If this came out as a streaming, like spin-off kind of a thing, like that Punisher thing that just came out, which is brilliant and really dark, then do that, right? I the problem is I know a little bit too much about how the sausage is made in this, but what I will say is that I got to be careful. We
could just go into spoiler mode and let you finish your thought.
No, it's not even that. I just don't want to offend anybody that worked on the movie.
Yeah.
I loved it, but I didn't like it necessarily. I like how it made me feel. I like the joy, but I want to think. I want it to be cerebral. And the Mandalorian is a profound, dynamic character in seasons 1 and 2. In season 3, he's kind of a set piece. And this, he is like that. I'll just, the rest of my stuff I'll save for the spoilers, but I do think it's a problem that there's really only one woman in this movie. That's it. And she has nothing to do and seems purely uninvested or unaware of what is going on. And that rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
All right. That's a great tease for spoiler mode. So this is your exit ramp, if you have not seen The Mandalorian Grogu and you don't want it spoiled, this is a good time to stop. Go see the film, not 4 times like Greg has maybe, but 1 time, and rejoin us for the rest of the. What?
I think also fair to note we're probably going to spoil all the related TV shows. So,
that's true.
I mean, just to note that, I think we have
Yes.
to, as Dan started opening that door, I think that is something we're going to have to discuss in the contrast between the movie and the show.
I will say somebody in the world of journalism texted me and said, I'm laughing that you wrote spoiler-free review. What is there to spoil in this movie?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
Totally
that
fair.
said, here's spoiler mode. Okay, so to echo what Dan just said, normally when we go into spoiler mode, and Greg has now caught on to this and has started doing it on other shows. But bringing up what's the most biggest thing you could spoil, right? We'll start with that. And I did have to sit and think for a minute, which I think proves Dan's point a little bit. Is that this is unless you're thinking about the granular, nerdy Star Wars details, their plot point wise, there's maybe not a ton to spoil. But what I came up with was, and I want listeners to hear this in the voice of Gonzo from A Muppet Christmas Carol, which is only a reference that maybe Greg will appreciate. But Din Djarin, who did not die. And actually, I don't know if any of us here would have thought that him dying was on the table. I do want to ask about that. But I was listening to some other, outside of the concentric circle of our podcast, I was listening to, I think, House of R. They really went hog wild in terms of over speculating, to the point where I'm like, none of this can happen in this movie. What are you talking about? I love you both, but this has gone too far. And how could you not be disappointed in this movie if you think that all these things are going to happen potentially? But anyway, they were saying oh, could Din die? Could this be the end of the road for Pedro Pascal? Maybe he's a very busy actor. He's got a lot of stuff going on. Maybe this movie would be the place to do that. Did any of you actually think that? And in the scene where he's been poisoned and it's clear that unless something else happens, he's going to die, and Grogu comes back and all that, those final scenes, were you at all worried that he was actually in peril?
No.
PT shaking.
I think I don't know what it was because I can't put my finger on it. I feel to me it was maybe it was the fact that they were we're doing a movie and it's The Mandalorian. It's going to be called The Mandalorian and Grogu. It was just it was okay, no chess pieces will be harmed in the events of this movie. This is going to not change anything in terms of what's actually been happening. That felt very clear to me the whole time. I didn't hear the speculation. Maybe I also wasn't as plugged into the pre-movie talk. I was just I'm just going to go see it and see how it goes. Which, again, I think Dan has been making great points, but we will continue to discuss, the problems of that as an approach to making a theatrically released movie. But I was no, this is just going to be a thing that stands on its own. Nothing big is going to happen. When it was but you're poisoned, and then you think he sends Grogu away, and then he collapses. I felt the same way I did when half of the world got snapped in Infinity War, where I was am I supposed to be worried? Because I'm not. I know this isn't going to be permanent. Okay, cool. This is great. This is an interesting narrative thing. And spoiler, I think it's we're in spoiler mode. I think it's the best part of the movie is when we get Grogu's world, we get his whole sequence. That's cool. The only slightest bit of pushback I have to the idea that there's no growth in this movie is that it's Grogu's movie to grow and to actually have to do different things and try to be on his own. Does that matter? I don't know.
We're gonna have to arm wrestle over that point.
That's fine. But I think that that might be that would be the attempt to defend it.
Yes.
By saying that that's there. I'm not fully committed to taking that stance, but that part is great. And so I was this is great. I'm excited for what's happening for Grogu with Grogu. I never thought Mando wasn't going to be up and out and about by the end of the movie. So I was very surprised to find out afterwards. Sky Talkers felt similarly to the House of R people. They went into this movie thinking this for sure was the death of Din Djarin.
Did they really?
Yes, that they thought they just assumed that's what was going to happen.
There were some of the people that watched it with me a couple times.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And so of course now I understand why some of those early fan reactions were nothing happens, because they thought big things would happen, whereas I thought it was more just oh, yeah, it's all relatively small. We're kind of moving in circles, but whatever. But if you thought it was going to be more than that, separate from thinking it should be more than that.
Sure.
If you thought it would be, then you'd be very disappointed in this. So that makes sense.
Well, I mean, people who have been listening to me babble for years on the show know that one of my biggest things is expectation without regulation equals fan constipation. I had no idea. That was a rumor that the Mandalorian was going to die. I had no clue. I have carefully cultivated my feed so that I don't see that kind of stuff. But there was a moment, my first viewing, when I saw that and I thought, I wonder if he's going to die. And the worst part about it, guys, is I didn't care. Like, not in a bad way. Not in a bad way. I just thought, they have not given me enough to emotionally invest in this guy. Him caring about a child, that is not character growth or development. That's just basic human consciousness. And it made me sad that I felt that way. But to be honest, if I'm being purely honest, and I always am, I think the Mandalorian story really ends at the end of season 2, and they should have left it alone. It was perfect. That was the arc. It was wrapped up between seasons 1 and 2. So there's really not much more story to tell, at least based on what we've been given. And I'm not a negative person. You guys know that. So I hope it doesn't come across that way. It's just, literature teachers, you know how we are. And so it bummed me out that I didn't feel bad. But that being said, I didn't really think it was going to happen. And as much as I would love to sit here and tell you it's really about the story, that's what drives the bus. It's not. It's about money. Do you know how much money the Mandalorian and Grogu make just in merchandise alone? This is going to go on forever.
And that's just from me.
And that's just from, yes.
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have action figures and popcorn buckets behind me at all. So, and I want to support what Dan is saying anecdotally with my daughter as well. So, like I said, I went by myself opening night because Dad needs to be alone in his head and his feelings for Star Wars and figure out what I think, and then I'll take the kids the next day. And so I was with my daughter is 6, and she was loving it, having a good time. And I realized I needed to make a run to the men's room. So I actually kind of the moment where Grogu's he's like, go get on the ship. We'll go. I'm like, I remember nothing happens here. I'm like, I'm just going to run out and I'll be right back. I prepped Ada. I was like, I'm running right out. You just stay in your seat. Don't move. I'll be right back here. Questionable parenting. I just had to go. And I come back in and Din is passed out. And it is just as I'm sitting down, Grogu reveals that he stayed. But I turn to Ada and I say, Ada, what did I miss? And she just looks at me. She goes, Mando died. And then turned back to the screen. So exactly what Dan's saying. She did not care. She was not traumatized. The bugs didn't bother her. She was just like, yeah, who cares? Baby Yoda's back on screen, Dad. Like, shut up. And I do think that speaks to the kind of merchandising of it all. And I completely agree on the larger thesis of how are we supposed to care about these characters when there's no growth and no arc whatsoever. And I would say the closest for me isn't even Baby Yoda. I think it's Rada, maybe. Like, again, if we had to defend this. But why I think that I think I want to curve or change the grade curve because it is hard to act in a helmet, right? Like, it's so great that Brandon Wayne and Lateef Crowder, I think, are 3rd and 4th build, so they're getting the credit they deserve for the shaping of that character. But it's hard to read into the emotion of that character when he's in his helmet his whole time. I was laughing at some of the prediction podcasts that were like, we're probably going to get Pedro's face for 70% of this film. I was like, he showed up one day last summer, guys, maybe 2, and then he was off to make, Eddington, I'm sure. And so it was, I thought it was telling. I think I saw his interview with Jimmy Fallon, and he was talking about how much he loved Sigourney Weaver, but all his anecdotes were the press tour. It's clearly they never met on set, period. It was, and you can kind of see it in those scenes. And I think that matters. I was just listening to a podcast about Last Jedi that reminded me when Rey and Kylo are force timing, the actors were on set to be the scene partner, even though they were not in the scene. Technically they were in it. And I think that matters, and that gets a better performance. love Sigourney Weaver. She's very wooden here, both because she's not asked to do much, and like, what is she given? She's sitting in a bar and just kind of dropped in. There was a little part of me today during my screen that's like, imagine if this could be Carrie. Imagine if you could drop Carrie Fisher into these scenes, not digital Carrie Fisher. Like, if
real.
Carrie Fisher had lived and could be like
That'd
running
be
a
cool.
Delphi base and so on, I think that could be really cool. So yeah, I'm rambling, so I'll stop. But I think this is all part of the problem here. And I also think Grogu's world is the best part of this movie because it's like weirdo puppets just doing stuff. And I really dug a lot of that. And I am very impressed by it. And that you'd give 15 minutes of your blockbuster film over to basically wordless, puppets walking around, a puppet walking around the woods. But I just think the framing around it. Here's my closing thought. Then I'll stop rambling, I promise. If you want this film to be about the emotional growth of Grogu from baby who needs to be protected to partner who is ready to face the world, then you do not tell him to heal repeatedly, right? This film wants him to be a pet and he wants him to be an apprentice.
Right.
You can't have it both ways.
Mm-mm.
And they chase whatever the gag is, and then you can't get invested in, oh, he's coming into his own, except not really. So
Not at all. He came into his own in season 3 with Luke, with Mando when he goes back, and all the things that help reclaim Mandalore. Like that was where the growth came. There was none in this.
No.
Greg,
I'm
you
getting
hit on
more and more frustrated the more I'm thinking about it.
Well, okay.
I thought this would be therapy for you, but it's the opposite.
I think I now understand the part I have to play in this episode, and it is the sole defender of this movie. No, I'm just kidding. Greg did hit on like the one thing that made me mad as I was watching this movie, and it happens twice where he says "heal, Grogu, heal," and I'm just like, he's not a dog. Excuse me, what is going on here? And it felt so inconsistent with the rapport that they have even in the rest of this movie, but also, or more so in the series, right? Like the series Mando would never say that to Grogu, I don't think, right? Like,
Nope.
The series Mando got choked up over learning his real name and was testing it out and being like, Grogu, like, how do I say this? And in a really, really sweet way. So yeah, that was just to get out of the way. That's the one thing where I was like, nope. I do not accept this. This is, when I remember this movie, I will erase those parts. But to kind of go, to be sort of the meek defender of this, I will say that two things. One is the score is actually doing so much heavy lifting.
That's great.
In the sequence, especially in the scenes that we're talking about, where there's no talking and it's a silent film. And so I think that I just want to give a shout out to Louis Göransson, right? Because there's a lot of work that score is doing to make us feel anything about what's going on. But in particular, I would say both times I watched the movie twice, and both times I watched it, I did feel something when Mando says goodbye to Grogu, says go, and then he's running through the forest, like continuing to fight. But I think it's almost like 90% because of the score in that. The choice of the music in that specific scene where he's running through the forest is what made me feel something, and not because it was happening. But the idea of the dramatic irony of like, oh, Grogu doesn't know that you know that you're going to die and all that sort of stuff. So it did get to be, and to offer my a counter case with my daughter. She was an emotional wreck through that whole scene. Like the second Mando passes out, she goes, no. And she's like, is he and she just continued to ask me if he had actually died and if he was going to be okay every 5 seconds for the rest of the movie until he was actually okay.
That's cool though, because she wasn't traumatized and she felt that emotional connection. I love that. I'm jealous. I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, but she is also like very prone, out of all children that I know, she is the most prone to being worried about characters in peril. It doesn't matter who they are. Or
that's sweet.
Yeah. I do wonder, and from that story, and obviously we have the counterbalance of Greg's daughter, who was like, who cares? Like, get that guy out of my way. The guy with the helmet is blocking me from Baby Yoda. But I wonder if those of us, including all 4 of us in this conversation, who have seen Mando and seen him grow and seen his relationship with Baby Yoda / the child / Grogu grow and change and evolve. If it's easier to plant some degree of connection to this version from this movie if you don't have all that luggage and you're just sort of like, this is a dad and a kid, like, okay. And there's, as we've discussed, there's not a lot more than that here, but like, is that enough to sort of be like, oh, like I was wondering if this could be a sequence of the movie. I was seeing some people discussing online who are not like big movie nerds, discussing the like, can I bring my kid to this? Like, how violent, how like, and they're like, oh, they're scary monsters, but like, it's okay. It should be all right. And I was like, oh, could this be a movie where like a 6-7-year-old like gets really scared about the idea of a parent dying, because there is that whole sequence where a parent dies. And like, it is that like, it's at that level of being generic of a parent. It's not like a particularly deep character or relationship in the movie, but like, is that still effective? And so apparently for at least some of the audience, it could be. I want to pick up on something that Dan said that I fully 100% agree with, even though I like this movie more than he does, which is that the Mandalorian story ended at the end of season 2. Because I think that's true. And they've never figured out what this is now, apart from a very marketable pair of characters that they want to keep together and do stuff with them. Okay. And it's in thinking, I've thought about it too much in the last few weeks, and I've been really connecting it to the times I spent growing up hearing that like Harrison Ford hated being in Star Wars, and Harrison Ford has no like interest in ever talking about Star Wars, and feeling, maybe that he's changed. He definitely talks about it more now, but I feel like the root of that is how much Harrison Ford talks about how Han Solo needed to die. And people were like, he says that because he hates the idea of being in Star Wars. And it's like, no, it's because Han Solo's entire story is in A New Hope. Like everything he does is there. If you want to extend it to him forging a relationship with another person and get it up to Cloud City and I love you, I know, great. But that's the end of his story. And he never had more to do. And so he was always like, there's no reason for me to be here. I should die to like inspire the other characters. And that wasn't him being like, I hate these movies, I wish I weren't in them. It was him being like, there's no story left here. There's nothing for me to do as an actor. And I do feel like that translates very directly to the fact that there is a clear, excellent, well-constructed 16-episode narrative, or 16-chapter, to go by the titles of the show, from the first episode of Mandalorian through the end of season 2. And there's been no real foundation after that for like why these two are together, besides, don't we all want to see them? And I kind of do, because I like seeing them in this movie, but there's nothing there, like underneath it. There's nothing holding that up.
And the argument that we're hearing that the reason no one else shows up is they don't want to confuse people to feel like they have to see other things. But for one thing, wouldn't that be smart? Because then you would turn people on to other avenues to, hey, if you enjoyed this story, here's some other things that you can take a part of or partake in, and that will bring you some joy. There was something else you said too I was going to talk about. Now I don't remember what it was, so it must not have been that important.
I do think I felt that the most with Zeb, because if you have not watched Star Wars Rebels, then the role that his character plays in the story could be literally anybody else.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make a difference.
It could be a toaster.
Yeah, it reminds me of when students write papers where the paragraphs are kind of interchangeable. Oh. And it's like you could put them in any order, and it's because they're not making those critical connections between the things that they're saying. They're just saying a list of things, and you could shuffle them in any order and it would actually give you the same value. And I do think it is sort of like that with a lot of these characters, because yes, it's a great like Easter egg call out to the more hardcore fans that do know that whole history, and you can argue that you can project all the things that everything you bring to watching the movie to that. But at the same time, it seems like a waste for the rest of the audience that doesn't have all that history with these characters. And
I remember what I was going to say now. You just sparked my memory. I hope I didn't interrupt you. I'm so sorry.
No, go for it.
So my concern, and I know I'm in with the good folks who also worship at the altar of The Last Jedi like I do, that after that movie, which made $1 gazillion, there were like a couple of loud people who wrote on the world's largest bathroom wall, which is social media, that they didn't like it. But not everybody writes on the bathroom wall, right? A lot of people loved it. But since that, we've gotten Solo, which I liked, I think, more than a lot of you. But that's because I met George Lucas there. That's not a brag. That's just a fact. That forever will be a part of my brain. And then we had The Rise of Skywalker, which to me is worse than this movie. And then we've got this. And they're a mixed bag, but we stopped taking risks. And my I don't know, concern's too strong of a word, because in the grand scheme of things, it's not that important. It's supposed to be fun. That being said, and because of the enormous amount of time we've all spent on this stuff, assume your audience is intelligent. Assume your audience is smart enough to go along for the ride. You can tell a really smart, cohesive narrative and still sell toys and still sell action figures. And so many people want to dress up like Star Wars characters and still have fun. You can do all of those things. And Jon Favreau, by the way, is an incredible talent as an actor, as a director, as a writer. He's amazing. So where is the disconnect? Because I do like this movie. I think it's fun. But for me, I guess sometimes fun isn't enough. And the fact that we've stopped taking risks as storytellers, when you've got arguably the world's greatest sandbox to play in, that's the part that kind of gets me spinning my wheels a little bit.
I think looking at that level of how this pair is managed as a property, it's utterly bizarre because when you both nicely pointed out, yeah, you get 16 chapters. You throw in those 2 in Book of Boba Fett, which advances their story dramatically compared to this movie.
Yes.
And so I completely agree with that narrative Dan just laid out. And then it was like, well, we're going to do the interconnected Marvel thing. So we're going to have this huge plot point where Grogu's going to leave Luke Skywalker's academy. It's not a happily ever after. He's back. And we're going to throw that in the middle of another show and then never I never understood what people showing up for the 3rd season premiere of Mandalorian and Grogu would think had happened. Like,
right.
Wait, didn't we do a season where he left? Why are they suddenly now back? And what's this spaceship and all those things? And I think that's exactly right. And I'm stealing a little bit from a friend of a few of us, at least, Dennis Keithley, who since the moment this was announced is like, I don't care. Get me to Starfighter. Because I think there's a lot more hope for that being something fresh and new and different, both because it's placed outside the timeline and it's new characters and so on. But I think it's a really interesting question of whether it was the right call to come back on this one. And I will say, if you start listening to those podcasts outside of Star Wars fandom, I think this is raising a lot of questions about how Dave Filoni is going to lead the company because fairly or unfairly, I think his brand is seen as safe. Let me bring up all my old favorite characters. We haven't mentioned Embo's in this movie. Not sure why, but he is. And it is very much kind of like the same spirit of the Ahsoka show, which is like, oh, I have all these toys I like to play with that I invented, so I want to bring them along. And so I think, this project, as I understand it, is kind of in between the Kathleen Kennedy and the Dave Filoni kind of leadership of the company. Both are listed as producers on this show. On this film, sorry. There's the problem right there in a slip of the tongue. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see. And I guess as I understand it, Starfighter is probably, Kathleen Kennedy greenlit it, and then Filoni will see the kind of final run of its production. So we'll see. But this doesn't make me optimistic about where Star Wars is going in exactly the way Dan articulated.
So I'm going to try to use your mention of Embo to segue to our next talking point. And to me, Embo, yes. So Embo represents to me actually both kind of the overall challenge that this film created for itself, but then also like the little bit I can grab onto in terms of a more thematic story. So first, the part of the larger problem is this movie has too many characters that don't talk, or
that don't actually exist,
or yes, or say very little. Like because Mando, I think, is a Mando of few words, and he's not very loquacious, right? And I think we just he needs a counter, and if you pair him with Grogu, and their bond is very strong, it's adorable, obviously, like I'm a big fan, but there needs to be another character that is doing a lot of the talking, and I think the movie gives us characters that either don't appear long enough to actually, like, the only monologue is by Rada the Hutt about his past and being the son of Jabba.
And he basically says the same speech twice in the movie.
He makes the same thing twice, yes.
Yeah,
within like 5 minutes. And so I think if you're going to have another bounty hunter, have one that like won't shut up, right? And I think that alleviates a little bit of the pressure of like, we're not getting any character development because like just no one's saying anything. And in some places, like the section of the movie at the end with Grogu, it's magical, right? Because you get to watch like a little him do his thing. But from a screenplay perspective, it just doesn't give you a lot of room to actually have the characters talking to each other and building the story. So I think that's Embo is emblematic of that, right? Like if we were to choose a bounty hunter, yes, Embo's awesome. He looks very cool. Love his hat as like Captain America's shield. It's all great. No notes for him as a bounty hunter. But at the same time,
use that hat, do they?
It's just the one fight at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. He uses it like he points it down, and then Mando's blaster fire.
That's true.
Okay. It, right.
Those of you who can't watch this, Jen just did a perfect visual demonstration.
Well, luckily she was wearing a big hat, so it made it a lot
which
easier.
worked out.
I do have like a cat bed here that's roughly the same shape.
Oh yeah.
Use that. But anyway, so that on the one hand, it's like his appearance in the film and his role in the film is emblematic of what I see as the larger problem of like the screenplay just is not setting itself up to actually build out a story. And then, but on the other hand, the story I do see, the story I can find, because this is the problem that I have, is like, even if my critical brain is like, yeah, that wasn't that good, or there's a lot of notes that I have, my heart, because it loves Star Wars so much, tries to kind of find what is there, right? And I think with Embo, he sort of like represents what Mando used to be, which is the cold, calculating, doesn't pick sides, is just in it for the bounty hunter. And I do think it's not particularly pronounced, but I do think, to me, the closest thing to a story that we get is Mando's stance post the show, where he kind of decides, I'm only going to fight for the good guys. I'm not a bounty hunter anymore. I have a child. I need to be setting a good example. And that's like his main line throughout the movie is, oh, but I don't do that anymore. I don't work for gangsters anymore. I don't want to do this. And like his whole story is kind of goes back to this idea of like his virtue is being tested a little bit because he said that he doesn't work for gangsters anymore. And yet he finds himself in this situation where he's literally at the beck and call of the twins. And he's like, wait a minute, this feels an awful lot like I'm working for bad guys again. Right. And then Rada kind of introducing new information to him to be like, no, like you have it all wrong. Like don't send me to my death. And then he has to make the call, as he tells Ward, right? Like I just made a call that like we could get the information we needed from him. We didn't have to turn him over. Right. So I think there's a lot in here about like the New Republic and Mando sort of in this time period trying to find their footing of like, what are they willing to compromise in terms of their ideals? Right? Are they willing to work with Hutts in order to advance their cause? It's very thin, but that is like the closest thing to an interesting story.
I wish that were the case, because that is awesome.
Yeah. And if you want, Dan will be so mad at this, but if you want the like even more selling it, certainly tipping into overselling it, I did see someone online describe the plot of this movie as a man hunting Nazis in exile and learning that you can't work with the oligarchs to try to bring them in because they're going to turn on you. Which again, like
no textual evidence for that.
Right. That's a great concept. And if you want to see that there,
it is.
I'm not going to hold it against anybody, but it's not the blasters went pew pew.
And from beat one, he's fighting Imperials with this child on his back, keeping him inside this craft, the AT-AT or whatever they're calling it today, with these detonators about to explode. So it's really not about safety. I mean, or he wouldn't even go. But the fact that Grogu is capable of protecting himself from the first beats of this film means that narratively and structurally, we don't need 20 minutes of no dialogue and puppetry, which was charming and adorable, and my son loved it. And the sequence where Grogu uses the Force to push Mando into that man-made or Grogu-made hut, and he keeps banging his head at the premiere. I couldn't even hear what was going on for 5 minutes. People laughed so hard. So that all works from that point of view. By the way, I have a lot of things to say that I enjoyed about it. I promise.
That scene. This is
go ahead.
Never mind. What I have to say is so stupid. That scene reminded me of me with my ice maker when it gets clogged, where I keep putting the glass up to it, being like, well, maybe it'll just jiggle loose, right? And it's like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead, Greg. That was not.
Well, I wanted to throw it. I think I want to move us into what I imagine is the shortest thesis please of all time. But I wanted to let Dan open it up because you've had the privilege of getting to speak a little to the filmmakers. And again, you've always, I completely agree, you generously take us all on those adventures and make it about sharing the experience, not bragging about the experience. I have a lot of trouble identifying what this film is about. So I wonder if from your interview or your time with the creative team or what you know from the dear friends at Lucasfilm. And again, I always like to say this when we're being critical of a movie. Making a movie is hard, right? None of us think we could do it better. And especially everybody on the internet who thinks they could do it better. Do it in the moment, not after the fact. You can't Monday morning quarterback when you're trying to write a script and get it done. So all due respect to all the creatives behind this. This is an act of love. I love seeing a table full of them sitting at the bar. So Jen, play Partagast, and then Dan, whatever insights you have about what you think they thought the thesis of this movie might be.
Thesis, please. Oh boy. From what I have gleaned from this and just sort of my own observations, I think that they just wanted to make a fun movie for people to come in and experience these two characters for the first time, while somehow just assuming that because we like Star Wars, we're going to go see it no matter what, while forgetting some of the real lessons we've learned from Andor and things of that nature, narrative ilk, which have something to say about the world that we actually live in, and sort of forsook that just to sell some movie tickets and to bring some joy to people. And by the way, I will never complain about joy. I sort of had an idea before I saw this film that this is what it was going to be like. So I had zero expectations. I don't think it would have been a lot of work to have a couple of sentences in there that show any kind of modicum of any connection to anything or any sort of a mythological link to anything in the Star Wars world overall, besides Imperial Remnants, because the Empire, when it's there, that is a story worth exploring. If you don't know this world post Return of the Jedi, and you see there are still stormtroopers around and Imperial agents, that's pretty fascinating. But maybe because of the real climate we live in, maybe they thought, yeah, that's too close. Let's just have some fun. And if that's the case, if that is truly the case, then who am I to argue with that? If I want more compelling Mandalorian stories, we already know what we would go and watch and see. And while I hope for there to be more stories, sure. But I don't need them anymore because I think that story has been told to a degree that I'm satisfied. So I guess if we want to go with the rare turkey leg cotton candy situation, then that's great. I will happily go back and get a couple more things of sugar. I will brush my teeth. I will floss. And I'll probably never go back to that cotton candy again. Which again makes me kind of bummed because I don't like feeling that way, but I have to be honest.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Acknowledging everything that Greg said about how, we can't make the movies better than this. Here's my pitch for what you're saying, Dan. The moment that, having seen it a second time, where I'm like, this, of all the moments where things feel stilted and awkward and feels like there's supposed to be something here, but there's nothing. The moment where I think that maybe we could get some of that little thematic hook would be when Sigourney Weaver gives Mando the Razor Crest.
Yes.
Because if you haven't watched The Mandalorian season 1 and 2, you're like, why is she giving him? I guess she's giving him a new ship. Okay. Like, that's just a ship. It doesn't mean anything. And there's no acknowledgement or recognition that, like, this would have any particular meaning for him.
Even from Din, by the way.
Yeah. And it feels like that could be a moment where it's just like, that this is what we're doing, is we're trying to rebuild. We're trying to rebuild something, and it's hard to do that. This is a step for you to try to rebuild the life you had before, or something like that. And you can be like, okay,
absolutely,
whatever. And then suddenly that might tie into the New Republic. That might tie into the fact that, like, he's trying to revert to a better version of who he was in the beginning of the first episode of the show. He's bounty hunting, but only for the good guys and only targeting guys he thinks were bad. And that ties into New Republic versus Imperial Remnants. And that could have been interesting, but they don't do that. And I think it's because they're just like, I don't know, like, he's firing his gun and he's flying through the air and stuff's going to blow up and there's going to be a monster every once in a while. And it's cool, right? And I will gladly go back and I'll watch it again. And if you told me they're going to make 2 more of these and nothing is going to move or change, I would go see those too. But, like, it's empty. But, like, it's also kind of fun. There is a core of this that's just like an 80s action movie. Condolences, Greg, for me bringing this up. But it's just like an 80s action movie. People shoot, stuff blows up. It's cool. And then, like, immediately someone's like, what happens in that movie? And you're like, there was some things that happened, but, like, it doesn't hook into you the way that a lot of the other stories do. But that's also what it was like reading the old comics and reading the old books.
Right. So we didn't have. But if the comics that we read in the old books were made on such a grand scale that it transformed pop culture for eternity, then we'd have a different.
Yes,
right.
That's true.
This isn't my main point. But what PT just said made me think of this in terms of 80s action movie. They're in one of the episodes that's in the Book of Boba Fett, but is really The Mandalorian. And I can't remember if it's like 5 or 6 or what the actual episode is. But there's a scene where Mando busts through like a butcher.
It's the beginning of chapter 6.
Okay, Thank you. And it's like he busts through the door and then just starts taking guys out, right? And I feel like this movie isolated that and was like, wasn't that so cool? And then did it like 8 times. And I enjoyed it every time. I'm going to be totally honest. I'm like, he's back. He's coming out of the shadows. He's busting up some guys, right? But the repetition did start to become noticeable after like the second time. Like, so noted. I'm just in support of what you're saying, PT. But in terms of like thesis, again, this is a stretch. I'm just trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel here. But I do think that this idea of like PT was saying, like rebuilding and like moving forward and shedding the past is because we haven't talked nearly enough about Rada the Hutt, who's great. And I really like him. But the parallel between Rada, I mentioned earlier that Rada the Hutt to me is the most interesting part about this movie. And the movie feels the most alive when he's in it ironically, even though he's a totally CG character, because his whole thing is, I wanted to step out of the shadow of my family's past. I didn't want to be a criminal like my father. I wanted to be a nice guy, not like him. And I think that parallels Mando and Grogu's story really well, because Mando, in theory, is, again, it's not really in the text all that much, but in theory, Mando is also trying to kind of shed his more criminal past to become a better father, right? And so I actually thought that parallel worked pretty well. I had to read into it a lot, I think, but to me it was there, and that is why Rada the Hutt was actually a really good character to be at the center of the story, because he was actually a very positive example of, well, here's how you kind of escape your past and move forward. I really wanted the movie to be more about like Gladiator, but make it Rada the Hutt. I feel like there was a glimmer of that, and Gladiator is one of my favorite movies. PT and Greg know this. There was a glimmer where I was like, oh, he's got the public opinion and it's turning the tide against Janu, and I just really wanted it to be that other movie. Or Rocky, I guess, is the other comparison. But yeah, I was like, oh, if only we'd spent more time. If the whole movie had been Rada the Hutt coming up through this gladiator ring, and then parallel with like Mando doing something, and their storylines converge, that would have been great.
Speaking of parallels, isn't it wonderful that the two Star Wars movies that have a special place in your heart contain Rada the Hutt, and there's some sort of an offshoot of a TV show?
Yes,
and are very clearly just pieces of a TV show assembled together into a movie like shape.
Yeah. I don't know what does that say about me? I don't know.
It says that you have a good heart and that you like to be entertained and smile, which is the best.
I think there's a lot of potential to Rada and Grogu's connection, but we don't get it. And so this actually just happened to me yet again. And Dan, I bet this has happened to you. And Jen, I bet this has happened to your husband, where you have an interaction with your kid in public and somebody comes up and is like, you are a good father. So I was holding my daughter's hand. We walked across the parking lot to the grocery store, and a woman's like, what a good dad you are. I'm like, can we raise the bar just a little? Like, you saw me for 2 minutes and I held her hand across a busy parking lot. Like, let's demand more of dads. And that to me is why the Rada plot kind of failed. Because I agree with you, Jen. And my answer to what I think they thought the theme was is something about fatherhood. And Favreau has talked in a couple interviews about being a father and how it means a lot to him. And it's like, yeah, but like, Rada is just like, wow, you're one of the good ones. Like, what did you see? You brought him into a dangerous place and got him knocked out by gas. That's not being a good dad. Like, what are you talking about? So,
but he's teaching him how to be his own man, Greg.
But he already knew that.
Yeah. Yes. And,
I will agree that it's inconsistent. The delta of Grogu from the beginning and Grogu at the end, other than the echoing of the don't touch the buttons. Okay, you can touch the buttons. Like,
you can sit on my
in
lap
between
and
those
drive.
two things, it's a little inconsistent. It's not like it's not a linear progression. I actually think the fix for this is to have Grogu push back a little bit. And that's the thing to me that was missing. And I was like, oh, like if only
teen
Din
angst.
Not letting him. Yeah, I guess we want teenage Groot. Like that's kind of what this leads to, which I don't know if that's what I'm not saying that's what I want.
Right.
But I do think that if there had been a little bit of resistance or resentment from Grogu about not being allowed to do things, like Dan said, you're letting me go into the fray, you're letting me do all these things, and yet you're still kind of treating me like a baby. What's up with that? Like if he had sort of like, if there had been some internal conflict where their relationship wasn't so harmonious and adorable for a little bit, and then I think that whatever happens at the end has a lot more meaning because they're sort of like him coming, like the old protect the young and the young protect the old, like that would have had a lot more potency had we had some kind of conflict between the two of them leading up to that.
Or give the Cara Dune thing where you like have to debate if you want to be a part of it anymore.
Right.
I mean, ultimately she decides I hate the Empire. And she knows deep down in her soul that there is a greater good I need to be answering to. And yet we're sort of told that Mando might be feeling that way. I only help the good guys. But that's what he does the whole time. It's not like he's changing that sort of an outlook on things.
Yeah. There needed to be a scene where he was fighting with Colonel Ward, where she was giving him an order. No, you got to bring Rada.
You can't handle the truth. Something like that.
She did kind of give me Robert Redford's character from Winter Soldier. I can't remember his name now.
Oh, really?
Robert Redford?
Her intonation when she's talking to him kind of reminds. I'm like, but he turns out to be a bad guy, so I don't know if we want that.
I think that intonation is you're paying me in cash, right? Two things. I have a point and a question that are stemming from the Rada discussion, which is maybe moving away from the thesis more. But I have. I don't know. I won't say this is an unpopular take, but I did have a take that I was feeling during my second viewing, which is not specifically about Rada, but just in general. Huts have never looked good in CGI. Huts always look like bad CGI is another way of saying that. And I was like, what if Rada could have been a big puppet? Like, they made so many puppets for this. I don't think it would have worked for the physicality, but I think that Rada as a character, and people have been, some people are pushing back on the voice performance. Some people are saying in general, the movie has bad CGI. I think both of those are somewhat related to the fact that Huts look weird. Huts look like
they're weird by design.
Right.
I didn't think the CGI looked too bad, but I
thought it looked good.
Yeah.
I thought all the Huts looked good.
But I think we're very used to seeing what Huts look like across the animated shows and the other times that the Huts have appeared in CGI. And I think more mainstream moviegoers and critics who are like, this looks cheap and this looks bad. Part of that, when they're saying the CGI looks bad, I think it is that Huts look weird. And I just wish Rada had been a puppet. And again, I don't think that's feasible.
We wouldn't have gotten those sweet barrel rolls though. Like when he's wrestling and he like side rolls.
But what if they had CGI'd the rolls, but then when he's talking, there's still like 5 British guys inside making it happen?
I think that would have been more jarring because that inevitably would have looked different.
Maybe.
Like, it would have created a contrast. But anyway.
Anyway, that's my random Hut bash. My question, which is more in the bigger sense of how we're feeling about this movie, which is, I think we'll circle back around at some point to talk about all the light, fun things, the moments we enjoyed. But we are, I think, understandably getting at like the problems with the core or lack thereof in this. How upset do you think we would have been if this had been the main Mandalorian plot of season 4 with the other side stories and Bo-Katan and other characters sprinkled in to make it, longer than it is now. But if this was what happened to the Mandalorian and Grogu over the course of season 4 of our television show that we watch, would we feel it is as empty and as coreless as we do when it's in the theaters? It's one of the theatrical movies. Instead of being one of all these seasons of television, it is like the singular Mandalorian movie, the first one in 7 years, one of only 13 movies in a theater. Is it because it's a movie that we are feeling this extra problem, or would this have carried over into Mando season 4?
I think 100% because it's a movie. If this were season 4, they would have to put much more exposition and different plot points and different structural concepts to extend to the amount of hours that would be required. Excuse me for that. So I definitely, if this were part of season 4, it would have been fine because you would have had to have sandwiched it with other things. You would just have to. Otherwise, I just don't know how it could possibly establish anything. Truly, the fact for me is that even if it's bad, when I see a Star Wars movie on the big screen, and I'm not saying this movie is bad, I'm just saying it's not necessarily where I'm at in my viewing experiences. I need to walk away with this sense of, wow, I just saw something I've never seen before. Even though I've been very vocal about my disdain for The Rise of Skywalker, there are still some moments where I can sit back and say, okay, that's a spectacle. I may not love that, but that's a spectacle. And I will say this movie, for all of its flaws, is beautiful. Like there's some really cool stuff that Favreau does with a camera where he takes on a sort of a first person narrative or some different shifts and things and different lenses that are used to portray some of the action. We're even following Din Djarin, which are very cool and have never happened in Star Wars. And if I could go back in time and ask him about that, that's where I would have put my focus because that part of it was cool. But again, it's a movie. It should be a bigger scale, and this wasn't. So that's my long-winded. I feel like I'm happy that I can just be long-winded and loquacious on this episode.
Yeah.
It's the long take promise. For sure.
Not called short take.
Yeah. Well, so what do we want to do? Do we want to have, because I put a couple of sort of softball celebratory questions in here, or we could just cut right to rhetorical situations.
Well, selfishly, I'd love to hear what the two of you have to say about PT's question.
Me too.
Oh, about TV versus movie?
Yeah.
Well, so if we took key plot points in the movie and then spread them out and then shaded in episodes of the show, then I think that would make sense to me. But I think as is, I don't think you could just turn this into a season of television. And I've been hearing that from a lot of critics to sort of say, oh, it's just 4 episodes of the show and they just squish them together to be a movie. I don't think if you look at the actual plot structure that works. Like, I think a lot of critics have sort of said, oh, I could feel breaks in the story that felt like the end of an episode. But I think if you plot out everything that happens in the movie and tried to organize it into individual episodes, I think you would actually have a hard time. Because it is kind of more of a, and I'm spoiling what I was planning to say for Rhetorical Situation a little bit, but like it is a little bit more like a quest narrative than a TV series in its plot structure. It's like, oh, we're going here. Oh, we're going here. We're meeting. We're talking to this person. Oh, they're sending us to this other person. So it does have actually almost like a video game play quality to it, like a point and click adventure kind of thing. Oh, we got to go talk to Martin Scorsese. Oh, he's going to point us to the gladiator ring. Okay, we're going to go to the gladiator ring. Oh, then we find out that Rada actually wants to be there weirdly. Now what do we do? And then like, oh, we got to go back to Martin Scorsese. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's a very good answer, but to me, it actually feels like none of the things we're talking about. It's sort of its own, which I think is why people are bumping up against it so much, among all the other things we're talking about. But
I liked Dan's kind of original formulation, comparing it to something like the Punisher. I don't even know what you call it, special that just aired. And to me, what that screams is TV movie, because I'm that age, right? Where it's like, if this was like, tune in Friday night, we've got a special Mando, and that would be fine, right? Like if this dropped on Star Wars Day on Disney Plus, like sign me up 10 times and I would be a lot more positive. I think, well, and it's, you can never prove the counter narrative, but like, I'm imagining what the discourse would have been like for a week where they're like, oh my God, the only episode of Mando we got this week was just Grogu walking around, meeting Gator Man, and you got a little staff. And like, I think that would have been like one of those TV episodes that breaks the format and everybody like remembers as a really special,
like a sunny day in the void in the Clone Wars.
Yeah. Good
or like episode 5 out of 6 of every Marvel Disney Plus show.
Where they kind of break, yeah.
Where that's either the flashback episode or the silent, or like out of the flow of the main narrative.
That's when Ms. Marvel time traveled, yes. And things. So, well, and so kind of to some of what Jen was saying, like, about it being a quest, I think what I thought about seasons 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian is they said, let's look back at the spirit of the Westerns and the samurai that inspired George, and let's do that. And this very much is like, let's look at the like serial structure, right? And to me, Jen, when you're saying the quest narrative, you're very video gamey because you're just a modern person. But like, it makes me think of those serials where it's like just run up to a cliffhanger, resolve, a little bit of adventure, cliffhanger. And like I go back to what Dan said, like that doesn't give you a narrative. Like it just doesn't you can't draw the plot diagram on the board and fill in the steps for that. And to me, again, I think that's why when you go back to what influenced George, you're forgetting that what made Star Wars unique is George merged that with Joseph Campbell and mythology. And when you sidestep all of that, you get the cotton candy. And yeah, delicious. I've had a nice mouthful, but I really don't feel sustained. So I totally breaking PT's question. Like, would I rather see this movie on the big screen or the Gorman arc? I'd take the Gorman arc, right? Like it had the amount of spectacle, it had the heart, it had the depth. Like you could do some of those big treatments of Andor in, very similar fashion, and it would have been great on the big screen. I think this movie didn't surprise me with any big screen. All the action was hinted at in the trailer. We got what we were sold. And so, but like Star Wars on the big screen to me is more dogfights, more big battles. The choreography is great. Not dismissing that. I completely agree about the camera. I guess the camera inside the AT-AT was shown prior to the film's release somewhere, maybe in Japan, but I'd never seen it. And so I was like, this is incredible and really cool action. But then, okay, that's it.
Blowing up the Death Star versus blowing up a tree.
Yeah. Felt very Avatar.
It's a very slimy tree. I don't know.
Yes, it is.
There's buildings in the tree. I part of why I asked that, which is not something I, it was formulating while we were talking about it, is partly the like, how much do we think we have a higher bar? And it sounds like we do for a movie, a theatrical experience versus a TV experience. And also thinking about like, what does Mando do in season 3? What does Grogu do in season 3? How do they grow and evolve over the course of that season? And I think that most people think that season 3 of Mandalorian is the worst season of Mandalorian. There might be one or two people out there who have a different opinion. But I also, Jen and Greg have already heard this. I have long advocated for season 3 of The Mandalorian should be the Book of Boba Fett. Season 4 of The Mandalorian should be the Book of Bo-Katan, and make it clear that season 3 is about this other character and not about the Mandalorian, and he's just a background person. But I do sort of wonder the degree to which, like, given what, Dan, you were saying earlier from what, you talked to them and the interviews that you have seen about how they wrote season 4, and then then it shifted. They decided unclear fully, to make it into a movie. It does, like, how, I don't know how different it would have been if they had just pulled out the season 3 Mandalorian story points and made it into just 1-2+ hour Mando adventure. How different it would have felt, both in terms of, look at all this action. Don't ask about what's happening or what it means. Just enjoy it. Because there's some cool dogfights, and there's some, he's in Mandalore. He's fighting the Morlocks down there. Like, all kinds of stuff's happening. But, I don't really know if they grew. Like, he's not the character who grew that season. Bo-Katan's the one who grew, and the Armorer to a degree grew. Yes. And so this sort of feels like, what if you take out the characters who there's a plan for them, and we just get our 2 main characters doing stuff. And again, I'm like, maybe this is why I weigh the most of the 4 people here. I would eat that cotton candy over and over again. I'm like, that sounds great. But it's, I while fully recognizing and acknowledging that, like, there's not a lot there. We're just sort of getting some Star Wars action, but I don't know. Are we, yes, we should have higher standards, and I'm sacrificing my critical faculties for Star Wars enjoyment, surface level enjoyment. But also, that's nice to have that. It's like we can have the really heavy Andor, like, narrative, social commentary element of this franchise, and we can have, look at these cute little guys, and look at his dad going pew pew pew, and that's all we have.
That's much more of a juxtaposition, I think, than some of the other stuff. It's the heaviness and lack of joy of Andor combined with pure joy with Mando and Grogu, and lack of any heaviness or narrow narrative grounding of any kind. I do want to say, I don't even know we're going to get to this, and I'm so sorry, but the first 15-20 minutes are about as good as it gets as far as just pure action, establishing the Mandalorian as a gritty character who can handle himself, who is clearly against the Empire, who will stop at nothing to make sure that they are not able to come back into power. The way that he works well with this diminutive small creature that looks suspiciously like Yoda. Boy, I wish there was a story where we could find out where he gets a cane, because Grogu needs a cane, right? And it's just that if everything was like that opening sequence, I would be singing a different song, I think.
I actually think it was in the roundtable interview that you did with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, Dan, but they mentioned Harryhausen and like monster movies as an inspiration, right? Mm-hmm. And something you just said made me realize Mando is considered one of the monsters, because in that opening scene, they act like he's the monster in a horror movie, right? Yep. And the way that and that's down to the way it's shot, the way all the other the Imperial characters are reacting to him, being like, he's on the roof, like quickly, like, and then he busts through, right? And then if we fast forward to the storyline with Janu treats him like he's an oddity that should be caged and displayed in his arena, right? Mm-hmm. Like that because it's like, oh, because Mandalorians at this point in the timeline are so rare and so legendary, and that they are almost like the creatures that are kind of caged up and exploited.
And there's your story. Like
everybody else.
that is something that they could have unraveled.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that would be also the really good tie to not necessarily season 3's story explicitly, but I think part of the impetus of season 3 was like everyone's just been waiting for a juicy, full-throated Mandalore story with all the Mandalorians and like sort of restoring the glory that we've only heard about and has been referenced obliquely. Like, let's just do it. And I think part of the strength of the series and where it is building a story and a mythology out is through this idea of like the different factions of Mandalorians and the ones that follow the creed and the ones that don't, and where did all that stuff come from, and what's the history of the Mandalorians, and I feel like there's just a missed opportunity here to kind of integrate that into the story that they had.
Because what if he does have a fallback where he's like, you know what, I am this like incredible warrior, but I'm also a dad. Maybe it isn't right for me to be bringing him into this stuff. I know it well, but then he thinks, well, you know what? He's going to follow in my footsteps. He's going to be a Mandalorian and a Jedi. But then what if he had a moment where he's like, well, maybe that's not a great idea. Maybe I'm having this existential crisis where I'm thinking, maybe my child of the watch mentality isn't such a great idea for where I am in my life now. Maybe this whole keeping my helmet on is preventing me from having a real connection with this child who is, by the way, Din Grogu. Remember at the end of season 3, and that is all. Oh, I'm just driving myself more and more crazy.
It's funny hearing you talk about it and spin out about it a little bit. How much there's a parallel here of Jon Favreau and presumably to some degree co-writer, producer Dave Filoni all try to be like, let's not make it so people are stuck having to know the Clone Wars, Rebels, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, blah, blah, blah. That like they can we just won't talk about it. We won't even give him a character. He doesn't have to have any emotions. It's fine. Is very similar to The Force Awakens being like, people were really mad about the politics in the prequels. Let's never mention the political situation. Let's not try to explain the New Republic, the Resistance, the First Order. We'll just yada yada as fast as we can through that and never bring it up, and it'll be fine. And those are these like core issues, I think, in both of those movies that leads to just like it feeling very ungrounded in some way. Very sort of uncertain.
Like make the whole bed. Yeah.
People are still mad at Dave Filoni for referencing the cartoons just by having characters in it. So like you didn't avoid the critique. You didn't avoid the problem by like not having some of those moments that Dan's talking about.
You just exacerbate it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add in before we get too far away from the opening 20 minutes. Completely agree. And then this is me grinding an axe from the internet, which is people are writing this off as, oh, it's just Star Wars for families. Like, this is just a family film. Somebody is murdered in cold blood in the first 3 minutes. So, you know, saying, oh, this is just a family film, especially when you use it as pejorative. Like, I'm like, when was the last time you watched a family film, team? Like, you're like a 40-something-year-old. Like, you know, you don't have kids. This is not what family films are. And I think, you know, that's not a critique of our discussion tonight, because we've said, yes, there are many elements that are more family friendly. But to pretend that this is just Disneyfication or the Mickey Mouse effect on it that's a critique I don't have time for. Despite all the critiques we're leveling at it fairly tonight, that's one that isn't fair.
Yeah, that critique I would describe as anti-intellectual.
Yes.
Well, I was just going to say, in some ways, this whole episode or our whole conversation so far could go into the rhetorical situation, but I'm going to officially move us in there so we can get even more nerdy and academic potentially. So the rhetorical situation is a segment in which we look at a film through the lens of our academic experiences. So all of our regular co-hosts, and I'll add our guest today, are educators, are teachers of writing and English and literature and story. So we like to have this section of the episode dedicated to making connections to our experience as scholars and teachers. Now, I have created like a little menu, and so I think we get guest choice. So we could talk about mythology a little bit more, and maybe the mythological elements. Our conversation up until now maybe leads me to think that maybe we don't have a lot to say on that front. Who knows? We could also talk about the representation of teaching or mentoring. And once again, maybe because of what we said so far, that will be a short conversation. And we've already covered that a little bit in Thesis Please. Or we could do kind of, because the rhetorical situation is about any contextual factors that impact composing or interpretation, we could do kind of a larger franchise check of what does this mean for the future of Star Wars storytelling. So, Dan, do any of those topics pique your interest?
They do. I just wish they piqued the interest of Disney and Lucasfilm. Boy.
Oof.
No, I know. Look, and even though I'm of the four of us, I don't have a doctorate, but I do teach dual credit college writing. And I was actually, before I started Coffee with Kenobi, I was going to get a doctorate, and then I started the podcast. So I would argue I've got multiple doctorates in Star Wars, I would say.
We'll grant that. I'll talk to our accrediting body. I can totally make
thank
that.
you.
Because
I'm with some like actual doctors that actually have important things to say. Mythologically, like just at its core, myth, of course, is a Greek word meaning a myth from mythos, which means myth or story. So is there a story here? Yes. The Mandalorian is fighting Imperial remnants. He gets another mission. Okay, but I'll give you this new ship, and hey, you kind of have to get a kick out of it anyway. Then he gets tied up with Rada, and then Dada ends up rescuing Rada, and then he almost dies, and then we get 20 minutes of Grogu swimming around. So what I'm most interested in, what I would like to propose is I can come back in about 6 months or so and revisit this, because every Friday in my mythology class, which I teach high school seniors, I show an episode of The Mandalorian, and almost overwhelmingly, a lot of my students have not seen The Mandalorian. And I'm convinced if it was ethical for me to give an affiliate link for students to get Disney Plus because of me showing them The Mandalorian, I would be a wealthy man. But I would not do that because it's unethical. And so they love the story. They love these characters. They're so drawn to them. And I've already gotten tons of emails from former students and students I'm going to have next year. What do you think about this movie? Well, I want to know what they think about this movie. How does it fit into the overall story, the structure? Do we learn more about the Mandalorian? And you all know this so well, too. We can learn so much from our students about something we've been looking at for so long that it is almost like takes on another form because we've just been staring at it for so long. How is that going to look? I want to read Pablo's book about the visual dictionary of the Mandalorian that came out the day of the time of this recording. But what does it add to the broader Star Wars mythology besides bringing Rada in? I don't know if they'll ever do anything with that. Yes, we get to see a little bit more of Zeb, but what do we really know about Zeb from this at all? Besides the fact that he can fly and he's got a cool voice. I don't know that there's a lot there to add into the overall story. And I'm wrapping up the Build Your Own Darth Vader encyclopedia that I've been writing for 2 years, 400,000 words. I spent so much time on some of the nuance of just the evil and the dark side of the Force. And I've been thinking about what would I write about from this movie? And I don't know what that would be. It's a rhetorical question, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I want to pick up a couple things you dropped there, because those are the hard questions for me, and I like. So I already recorded one guest appearance on Force Ghost Conversations with Anthony.
Oh, sweet! I can't wait to hear it.
And one of the things I started my comments there with the Beatles song, which, Jen, we can't afford on this show. He has a much higher budget over there. But turn off your mind, relax, and float downstream. And that to me is the ethos of this movie. If I want to enjoy this movie, I just have to stop thinking. I have to turn off this part of my brain. But when we're asking these questions, like trying to turn it on and trying to find something there, to me, myth has to be about encoding the values of your civilization to teach the next generation, to teach others.
Hear, hear.
We look at something, I mean, back to Dan's point about listening to our students. All my students knew I'm a movie guy. They know I'm a Star Wars guy. They were all asking me about what I was excited for about the Odyssey, not about Mandalorian and Grogu.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I think when I return in September, because I'm on summer break now, that they will want to ask me about that, and we'll want my thinking on that movie and not this one. And so we look at myths like that, and that's how we learn about these societies, right? We learn what their values are. We learn about Achilles' love of Patroclus. We learn about Odysseus. And when I look at this, I don't know that this has something that it wants to teach us. It doesn't seem to have that kind of theme or message as we've articulated. Jon Favreau has talked a lot about fatherhood and how much that means to him, as I alluded to before. But this is not a movie about a father, really. Like it, and Dan said it right earlier. It's like, if you want to show me Mando is left on the ship because Din is too protective and doesn't want him to come on the AT-AT raid, then sure, we could get then to where we get at the end, and that would make sense. But he's there. He's seems to be on his own little Mission Impossible style mission alongside Din. Like he's right there. So all I am left to like puzzle about is they are like still trying to put little mythological elements in. To me, the clearest example is that Din dies for 3 days and is resurrected from a cave, right? And like oh, he's no longer in the cave. Don't look for me in the cave. I'm outside washing my face. I don't know what he's doing, but so like I think there's an interest there, but I just think this is where the movie completely falls flat. That I see no mythology. So I'm gonna lay all that as a gauntlet to Jen. Come on, Jen the Defender.
Yeah,
do you see a myth here? Do you see a lesson or a value here?
Because Greg, I love your definition of the myth teaching us about our culture, and that is the main thing that we talk about all the time in mythology class. That has to be that. Otherwise, it does not stand the test of time. It would not.
That's why I'm a Star Wars fan and not a Ghostbusters fan, or fill in your other property, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so I have a very long quote that I'm going to read in a second, but I want to set it up a little bit. Because Dan gives me license to do this. Like every time I've appeared on his show, I bring some kind of long, convoluted, really dense quote that only sort of makes sense.
Block quote time when Dan's
block
around.
Quote time. Yes.
35 words
yes,
or more.
No paraphrasing, just pure block.
That's right.
Quote. But I want to set it up a little bit with the idea that, and this is what I've been chasing this whole conversation, right? Is to be like, well, what is there? Is there something that could have been there? The glimmering, the mirage of an actual story that we could have built on here. And I think part of it is the idea of anyone can become one of the good guys, and being one of the good guys means you never compromise your ideals so that you're even remotely resembling the bad guys. So I'm saying this for two reasons. One is, again, it all comes back to Rod of the Hutt. Rod of the Hutt at the end of the movie, I have some logistical questions about this, but it looks like he's going to be joining the pilots at Adelphi base, right? And that he's going to, like, Zeb's going to go find him some kind of uniform that might fit him, even though he can't fit in the cockpit of a ship. Like, I guess maybe he doesn't necessarily have to be a pilot. He just says where he wants to work for the Republic, right? And so he gets recruited at the end, right? And so the idea is like, even a Hutt, even someone who's the descendant of some of the worst underworld criminals in Star Wars canon can to kind of join up and be one of the good guys. But I also sort of, to me, the story here really seems like antithetical to the philosophy of Andor. And I don't mean that as in like one is good and one is bad, but I think the thesis of Andor is, no, if we want to win, if we want the good guys to win, we got to get our hands dirty, right? We have to compromise our ideals. We have to do some bad things to justify the ends of winning this spycraft war that's going on. You have to color outside the lines. You have to do some things that you're not particularly proud of. You have to break the laws. You have to break the rules, right? And it feels like this film, if it were to kind of be trying to teach us something, is no, never do that, right? Like, you always have to kind of stick to your ideals, your virtues. Don't make deals with bad guys, because then the bad guys are just going to double cross you, right? Like it is much less about like playing the game of like, you have to kind of play at the level of the villains to beat them. This seems much more idealistic in terms of like, no, if you're saying you're a good guy, you can't do bad guy things. And to me, that actually is like a pretty classic, like thing that myth might teach us. And that's why I briefly mentioned quest narratives earlier, but I think, or the sort of like full galaxy brain version of that idea is that, to me, the genre through which this movie makes the most sense is the chivalric romance, where Mando is the knight in Shining Beskar.
He fights a dragon.
And he literally fights a dragon. He doesn't technically slay the dragon. The dragon lives on. And
he lets the dragon slay his true enemies.
Yes, I guess that's true. But yeah, so to me, the idea of like, he's a knight errant who's like trying to be good, but inevitably gets put in a situation where he has to be working for bad guys. Again, it's not fully developed in the movie that we get, but that to me is the closest, the most mythology adjacent version of this movie. And I think the thing we forget is that myth oftentimes is very simple. And this is where it's block quote time. So Claude Levi-Strauss, who's this like anthropologist who's pretty big in sort of early mythology studies and structuralism, his whole thesis was like, myth is a language, right? We can break it down into its component parts. Words make up a sentence if you string them together. Parts of a story, archetypes strung together make a myth. And I found today this quote from one of his essays that I feel like really spoke to me in terms of like, again, overly rationalizing what's happening in this or not happening in this movie. But he says, poetry is a kind of speech which cannot be translated except at the cost of serious distortions, whereas mythological value of the myth remains preserved even through the worst translation. So poetry can be kind of construed and misconstrued in lots of different ways. But myth generally cannot. Whatever our ignorance of the language and the culture of the people where it originated, a myth is still felt as a myth by any reader throughout the world. And so like, again, that's not to argue against everything we've spent 2 hours pointing out about what's missing and what's kind of hollow about this movie. But I do think there's kind of a moral simplicity to it that does feel very mythological to me.
I love that. I propose a question to go along with that. While that is all true, isn't that like Greg's story about holding his daughter's hand? Like those are like,
right.
Those are so expected. Like even the original film, which is a transcendent film about to be 50 years old. At its core, it's not super deep, but there are ideas there. There are ideas. This is a movie that has it has characters. You go from point A to point B, but is it a story that they are like, what is it trying to say? Even within the context of the story itself, Mando already has he has no conflict of any kind. He does what he is asked to do. He does it well, but there's no, there's nothing to it. So I guess I'm going to have to try to, whenever people ask me, do you like this movie? I'll say, yeah, it's super cool. And I'll just leave it at that. But I won't have much more to say because the story doesn't either. And again, I just don't like being this way, but it's hard for me. And I think it's because I feel so close to the material. I feel so close to it, like we all do. Like we love it so much, but things can only be exactly as they are.
Dan, we often paraphrase you and say that only some no's make your yes matter. So I don't think you should hesitate, but I completely agree with you that it does feel a little off to not be that kind of rip-roaring cheerleader for something like this.
Right.
And your quote made me think a little bit about, putting Star Wars into its political context of when 1977 and I do mean Star Wars, not
right.
the whole franchise, but George Lucas, famously said, like, part of the problem of the 70s in his mind is everything had gotten so convoluted and all about the gray and the anti-hero. He wanted to give us a message by kind of making it super simple. Light side, dark side. One side is selfish, one side is selfless, and let's just simplify that. And to think about, like, I think you're right that this movie is a little closer to that level of purity, although let's not talk about like light side, dark side. We're not going to do any of that. But wouldn't that be interesting in the conversation of that Dan brought up of Mando, of being a Mandalorian and a bounty and a Jedi and so on. But I think it's also just like so hard in our current society to accept a message that in any way construes it as us and them, because all of the worst parts of our society are defining that line and saying we're in us and they're a them, whichever line you want to cross. And so I think in this moment, and I completely agree. Throw a little joy into this world. God, we need it. We love it. We're paying through the nose all the time. But I do think that it's a little dangerous to participate in some of those potentially in narratives that can be misconstrued by that kind of simplicity. You can only stick to your principles. You can't ever consider somebody else's point of view. I think that makes me a little nervous, so that, but I think you're right that this film is not aiming to do any of the Andor stuff, which, and I want to be very clear. My first Letterboxd review, I acknowledged Star Wars is going to be a big buffet from now on. You used to be a Star Wars person or a not Star Wars person. And now every single one of us is going to be, I'm a this type of Star Wars. I'm a that type of Star Wars. And I would say, I would say the Mandalorian and Grogu is the pizza at the Chinese buffet, right? Like, what's it doing here? I don't really know. But it doesn't look so bad. Maybe I want to slice a pizza at the Chinese food buffet.
Yes, I love that. And to its credit, it doesn't set out to say it's something that it isn't. Right? Yes. I've never heard anyone say this is the magnum opus. Right? And every time I say something that's somewhat contrary, I feel a bit like I'm breaking Jen's heart, and I feel like a big
no, it's okay.
poop about it. Because I'll defend the fact that it's fun. Because again, Mesa and I had so much fun. Not just that it was where we were, but just like seeing Star Wars on the big screen with my son, the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I do think we've had these sort of waves of eras of, with the original trilogy, there was the Dark Times, there was the prequels, and then, it was not that long, only a decade. It's weird to think as much time passed between Revenge of the Sith and The Force Awakens as between The Force Awakens and The Mandalorian and Grogu. It was like 10 and a half years.
Wow.
But that like sort of first attempt in the post-Sale, post-George era of Star Wars, where it was like movie every year for 5 years, boom, 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 a new trilogy of Skywalker saga plus 2 side stories, that now we're on the other side of that, and we're at this like additional side story TV show spinoff. Like, it's weird to like figure out how to describe it in comparison to even Rogue One and Solo. But yeah, I don't know. There is like everything we've all been saying, and Dan, I respect your commitment to what about the story? What about the core like characters and narrative requirements and the mythology of it? And everything that you have said is correct and right. And I feel so like not fraudulent, but I feel so like just critically inept being just like, it's still fun though. Like, I still really like it. I know we're all saying it's still fun. So that's not to like whatever, but there, like, I wonder if once we get, to another one of Jen's questions that she had said it to the rhetorical situation, once we get a few more Star Wars movies down the line and we see what happens, is this just going to be a weird little outlier? Is this going to be a new regular installment of the kind of movie where it's just like nothing, don't worry about anything, like just sit back and enjoy the action? I don't know. Like, I think if this becomes half of the new Star Wars we get, I'm going to be real bummed about that. Mm-hmm. But at least as of right now, like, there's all of these issues, but yeah, I also had a hell of a time. And I think I will be going back and revisiting it just to have some fun Star Wars action in the same way that when I was a kid, and this got mentioned in that Countdown episode, as a kid, I watched the Jabba sequence of Return of the Jedi the most. Because that was like, you got like 35, 40 minutes, and that's fun. And that's like, it's got character moments in there, sure. But for the most part, it was just fun Star Wars action. And that's like, I think what this sort of feels like, but for the whole movie and with no reward of big, character movements like the rest of Return of the Jedi coming afterwards, at least until we get season 4, until we get Heir to the Empire, until we see where this all goes. Right now, it's just the no calorie or high calorie, no nutrition, fun stuff.
Yeah, and I fully acknowledge that all the things I've said over the course of this conversation are mostly subtext that I have created for as opposed to what's actually in the text. And I think, there's like, it's so it's sort of like, I like using my imagination to be like, what was the movie that this could have been? Where was there little seeds of potential that could have been kind of more fleshed out and turned into something that would have made us a lot more fully positive.
Rhetorical castor oil is what you're talking about.
Yeah. I guess so.
Headcanon fixes to Star Wars problems is a key part of a long-term Star Wars relationship. Yes.
That's fair. The other thing I'll throw in here too is like, I think I like this best as a monster movie. And I actually didn't come into this episode thinking that, oh wait, Mando's the monster too. Like that was something I thought of because in response to everything all of you have said. So thank you for kind of bringing me to that. Again, another imagined possibility, a sliding door moment of what this movie really could have been. That Guillermo del Toro consulted on this movie. Like, I think particularly for the character design and the sort of animation of Rada, and like how a hut would move and like what, but if you think about, what is at the heart of Guillermo del Toro's filmmaking, it is making what everyone else sees as a scary monster into something more human. And so it's interesting to think about the Star Wars galaxy sort of like looking at Mando from a certain point of view, but then we have because we've spent so much time with the show, know him to be very different. Is that in this movie? Not necessarily, but it could be if you look at it from a certain point of view.
Well, and I just want to throw in a couple things we haven't talked at all about tonight. I'm Ion Canon. There are just a few great little canon bits. I really love the Dejeric match. I kind of wish they didn't hang so much of a lantern on it, but like, the second in the trailer, I was like, I had my old Decipher CCG cards in my head. I'm like, that's a Mantilian Savarip, that's a Kenton Strider, that's a Kalor Slug. Like, I'm here for it. And it was really fun and cool to see it all kind of come together and see those monsters. To your Guillermo point, Phil Tippett, consulted, I think, because those were his original monsters. And then he also did some of the stop motion work, or at least supervised the stop motion of those two giant droids at the end.
I saw those things.
We've mentioned
close,
the stop motion.
Pretty cool.
Oh.
Sorry. Yeah.
I saw those things up close. They were pretty cool.
Oh, that's so cool.
They're like
cool.
that big. Yeah.
And so
listeners couldn't hear, but he said they were about like 3.5 stories tall, like they are in the movie. So that makes sense.
So that's like really cool movie making. There's been a little pre-show reel at my movie theater that's just Jon Favreau talking about making movies and kind of putting the whole toolbox in play. And I love the spirit of that here. Super quick ones. It's not named. They don't talk about it, but Nar Shaddaa is visible on one of the approaches to Nal Hutta. So you're like, that's there. That planet exists. The Smuggler's Moon. We could have that. And we've been talked to about the droid Gatra in like a million comics and books for a really long time. We actually got to see them.
That was cool.
Had a little prequel fun with the Staps and the droids. There was a K2 head on one. And I want, I feel like that's like the droids that started in L3's Revolution in Solo. Another part of Solo I enjoyed. I said mean things last time we talked about Solo, but like I feel like that might have started something that became the droid Gatra, and super cool. So there's a lot to like here. Again, if you're just kind of like, let's just go for a ride.
All right. So I think we're gonna forego our normal Oscars watch because honestly, it would probably be pretty quick.
Maybe the score. Maybe the score.
Score because Ludwig's on a hot streak.
Yes, he is.
Ludwig also has the Odyssey. So
yeah.
if the Odyssey runs. I don't think
it's
he's going to
definitely
get
the
double
Odyssey.
noms.
Yeah.
So,
and I think this is just the year of too many prestige blockbusters, potentially.
Maybe,
right? We haven't seen all of them.
I'll say I talked to Ludwig twice, both at Favreau's thing and then at the premiere too, and he could not be a more cool, down to earth guy. And I tried to explain to Mason. He didn't say the word context, but he's saying, "Give me some context for meeting this guy." And I said, well, I don't think it's going to be the same career ultimately. It'd be like meeting a young John Williams, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about him in that vein.
Yeah.
In terms of
He's
awards.
Terrific. I interrupted him when he was sending a text message, but it would end up being just fine.
Hopefully it was a text message to Ryan Coogler.
I hope so. Yeah.
No, he was locking down when he's going to score the Community movie whenever they make it, which allegedly is going to happen.
All right, Dan, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insight, your critical thinking skills. We always value that on the show. We pride ourselves on it. We're the worst at it when it comes to Star Wars, probably. I'm talking about myself, really. But yeah, this was so fun. Tell folks where they can find you, where they can find Coffee with Kenobi.
Right. Well,
whatever else you want to plug.
Look, this is a dream. I like I said at the top of the show, I love talking about things that I'm passionate about with intelligent people who are intellectually honest and critical thinkers. And I had the best time. I absolutely loved it and appreciate you all and your time so much. You can find everything related to me at coffeewithkenobi.com, including social media. I've written a few Star Wars books. You can find them on Amazon or wherever your books are sold. And then if you haven't started to subscribe to the Build Your Own Darth Vader model kit from Fan Home, I highly recommend it. You get a 1/2 scale Empire Strikes Back museum quality Darth Vader. And I wrote all the entries for all of the characters. So cool. And it's a lot of fun. And I think you'll have a lot of fun with it too.
Amazing. Greg, you're a busy man on the internet too. Tell us about it.
Never. Well, and Dan, I want to on air extend, you will absolutely need to come back and do one of our fan pick episodes. So we will let you, usually we say you pick 3 movies that you really love and care about, and we will all watch one of them. And we like to have that cushion so we can really pick a good one from yours, but we'd love to do it.
I'd love to.
So please come back for that. I'm on the internet at Ion Cannon, EYEONCANON. As I alluded to, Anthony King and I already talked longer than the runtime of this movie about this movie, and then but very different conversation in many ways than this. So it's great to get multiple perspectives. And then other than that, I'm going to be at the movie theater, maybe seeing some different movies. Jen, I think we got to cover Obsession. It did really well at the box office this weekend. It actually made more money in its second weekend than its first. So you're going to have to put on your horror hat. It's pretty scary, Jen. Maybe PT and I will take it.
Is it
you
gory?
On the internet? Where can people find you?
Is it gory?
Yeah, Greg, tell us more. Is it gory?
There are some gory parts, but it's got an absolutely bonkers central performance that's incredible and worth seeing. So I could tell you when to close your eyes, Jen, but I think you'd see it. So.
Well, you can find me potentially seeing Obsession, so I can record an episode with Greg on Letterboxd. The account is at PT McNiff, PTMCNIFF. You can also find the show there at LTR Pod. You can look for us on social media at The Long Take Review. You can email us, thelongtakereview@gmail.com, or you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whatever the mechanism is in your podcast place of choice. Please add us so you can get new episodes from us. Jen, where can folks find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Sopchockchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI, or on Letterboxd at Qui-Gon Jen. How do we close this out?
Make a Grogu coup.
Just crunching.
First round's on me.
Wow. I was going to say, I need to record myself eating the Nilla wafers. So it's like the crunch of eating cookies.
Or the fish he eats. It sounds suspiciously like when Scooby-Doo and Shaggy eat something.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it's good. Thanks for listening. You can follow The Long Take Review on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free, and you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops. We will also receive occasional written reviews of new Star Wars and Marvel.